Welcome to a new episode of Bridging the Gap. Today we have the pleasure of spending some time talking about all things athlete development with one of the leading voices, the leading doers in this space, Jon Harris. Jon is the CEO, founder of AthLife, spent a lot of time in the NFL, then building AthLife into an incredibly impactful organization, and you'll hear a lot more about all of the great work and insight from Jon. So Jon, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. This is great. We've been working together for years, so it's fun to get some time talking to you about this because I know when we prepped for this, there's some things that you weren't aware that we even did, right?
Yeah, for sure. Usually, I feel like this happens at random events across the country. So, yeah, I feel like a good way to get it on a recording. Before we dive into all of the work you do and AthLife does, when people have calls with you, there's always a lot of like cool things in the background, whether it's figurines or images or things. If you had to pick one, like what's your favorite or your most cherished one you have up there in the background or standing in your office?
Oh, for the entertainment work.
Yeah, general. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm torn between it's probably we did a Dr. J Black Panther thing with the Nets, and growing up Dr. J was had the big poster on the wall, and over the years actually had a few times where I got to spend some time with him. And when we were able to do that, just to be able to bring that to life. The funny story about that is, though, that was like 3 days before the world shut down with COVID, and there was a whole meet and greet there with Dr. J. And I was like, oh my God, I hope I didn't kill
Oh my
Dr.
God.
J with handshakes. But that was a really fun one. I think the Jeter one's another an all-timer. The thing we did with Eminem and Spider-Man and Marvel was really cool. So like we've got to do some really fun stuff. Those are probably, three of my favorites. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know I always see some. I know I've seen some in person too. It's a good collection of interesting ones, definitely to have on there. Well, as we're diving into this, I know I mentioned for people that may not know everything about you, but you started AthLife 22 years ago now.
yeah, yeah, started it in '04.
Wow, yeah, 22 years ago. If you had to summarize this in like one, two, three words, this like ride over these last 20 plus years, what comes to mind? What would you pick there?
Um, it's exciting. This morning I woke up, no alarm, five something, thinking about a proposal that I want to get done. I say need to get done, but want to get done. We're trying to figure out now how to support those that are more in like the minor leagues, right? That they don't necessarily have the same collective bargaining mandates and budgets and things like the full pro sports we work with. So I say exciting because like I wake up and every day I get to work on things that help people, entertain people, excite people, and get to be creative in that space. Just because we've been doing what we've been doing, I always challenge our team, and our team wears it, that we get to do the work that we do, and we have to stay on our front foot, and we have to innovate, and we have to continue to build programs and meet our the players and our partners where the world is going. Things are changing and really at a rapid pace. So I like that. I like the challenge, and our team really likes that, and so I just get excited about this work.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear just getting to do things versus having to do things. Before we jump in, for those that maybe don't know AthLife and your work, can you share just maybe the 2 minute kind of overview on all the things that you all are doing?
Sure, yeah. We operate in three buckets. So our foundational mission, we're here to help current and former professional athletes prepare for and then transition to the life after sports. So we contract with leagues or sports unions across the major sports in the U.S. So that's NFLPA and the trust for current former NFL players. We have a good relationship with the NFL in executing that. It's the NBA and that's the NBPA, the Retired Players Association, the Legacy Fund. We work with the NHL. We work with NWSL. We work with Major League Soccer and the Major League Soccer Union. We work with ATP. We work with Major League Baseball Players Association. So our total addressable market is pretty massive in terms of who qualifies for our service. We're an earned benefit for them. And so, we're only scratching the surface in terms of the service we provide. We are working with well over 1,000 players every year, both current and former. And we have a team of advisors whose job all day, every day is to do that work. And, again, for us to continue to, aside from the one-to-one advising, we're at events all the time. We're doing, we've got some educational content that we've worked on with you, whether that's for, different partners of ours like the NHL and in the work that we do collectively. So like the NHL, like they just launched that app for the players and we were helpful in building some of that. So that's the athlete services, which is like a core thing that we do. We have a foundation, which is our nonprofit that puts academic coaches to work with student athletes on the high school level, currently operating in over 100, I want to say 137 schools have this position in place now. About 15,000 kids have an academic coach, very similar to what exists on the collegiate level. So we help train and grant fund those positions. And then we have an entertainment business, which kind of actually came out of our educational services back in really '06. And we now, with that, we work with entertainment brands, helping them integrate into sport events. So we did over 200 events across NFL, NBA, baseball, soccer, hockey, tennis, U.S. Open, horse jumping. I mean, we have done all kind. We've integrated Marvel. Mattel is also in the last 3 years pretty big client of ours. We've just added some new entertainment partners. So it's probably a little more than 2 minutes, but really just fun, exciting stuff that we get to do. We've done some other things too, but those are the core competencies.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people probably that are listening to this may know from the pro sport side, but I think just always wanted to share with people all the other stuff. And I know we'll get to talk about the foundation a little bit in a second too. Before you started AthLife, you were part of working at the NFL, building some of these player development programs through the trust and some of the other things. As you were kind of at the league building this, like what are I guess the key things you learned during that time that then informed you into starting the company and then kind of growing it from there?
Yeah, I was fortunate to start an internship in 1995, right after player development was collectively bargained between the NFL and the NFLPA, and all the services were outsourced. So I was working for Richard Lapchick's organization and helping build the education program. We didn't really know what that meant when I took the internship. And that took about 6 years for the NFL to then say, hey, I want to bring this in. They wanted to bring it in-house, all the services, because they were working and the players wanted them and they wanted to do more. So in that time at the NFL, it was great for me to be able to go from person doing the work to, partially doing the work, partially administering, right? So now I started building some different muscles. And then the thing I saw and that what drove me to start AthLife was there really wasn't anything being done in the former player space that was working at scale. And I didn't have anywhere to send the guys when they were no longer an employee of the NFL. I didn't have anywhere to send them. So now, obviously, across sport, that exists. And, if you're just starting or new in the last 10 years, you'll say, can't believe that didn't exist. But so I was able to help build that, and really started with a small group of guys through the NFLPA. They bet on me to be able to try to help that group, and it went from 10 to 20 to we had actually had over 1,000 players in service, both current and former players, with just the NFL, NFLPA, and the trust this last year. So, and that's been pretty consistent. Trust's been around for 12, 13 years now. And yeah, every sport there's similarities with the different sports we work with, but every sport kind of has its unique opportunities and challenges, as you know, because you work in with a lot of the same people we do, and so that's kind of been exciting for me is just to kind of always be evolving our thinking.
To kind of drill deeper into that question a little bit, you mentioned in like the intro and in the when you were going through all the different people you're working with, it's obviously a lot of different sports, right? And a lot of different people coming from different backgrounds, some that are kind of more, you mentioned NFL, like a traditional college pipeline to, ATP or others where people may not ever have a kind of a step on a university campus. When you're working with all of these different sports, these different athletes, what are the key, I guess, like similarities you all see, but then also just some differences of the work you put in between all of these different sports? Because I know you work with them pretty one-on-one and pretty intimately as well.
Yeah, like education's so important. Career is the overarching idea, right? The 100% of the players will do something else. Some might sit on their ass, most won't, right? Even the ones that have been uber successful, like the Tom Brady's and the Derek Jeters. Like we don't sort of work with those guys, but they're working. Tom's broadcasting, and Derek was president of the Marlins and started a media company. So guys are going to do things, and getting those credentials, educational credentials, and the experiences are really important. And as you look across the sports, right, like you have to you have to play college to be an NFL player. You're just not going to walk right out of high school and do that. You look at baseball, about a third of the guys come out of college, a third of the guys come out of high school, and a third come out of foreign countries, in particular, Latin America and the Dominican is pretty strong pipeline. So there's three different constituencies, even within baseball, right? You're more likely now to make a major league roster if you played college baseball. You're less likely now to make a major league soccer roster if you went to college. So figuring out like degree completion or vocational certs or masters might be the push with the NFL population. Where with soccer, it's like, there's the Syracuse University Educational Partnership where these guys got no college experience, and now they're going to be doing fully online courses, and it's just solving different problems because every one of those constituencies is different. And then you've got the young guys and the old guys, right? So the old guys are going to not making the kind of money the young guys are making. So the young guys are more like, hey, I want to get involved in investing, or I want to start a nonprofit. So there's different ad- advising tools you have to build and experiences you have to build with the different partners to try to meet the needs. And you got to give them something that they can't get anywhere else, right?
Yeah, is that part of the reason to start the company in the first place of being able to take, some of the learnings and the things you all have, as well as the resources you all are working with from one league, and then if you're working with the next one, kind of being able to share best practices, like show them different ways of working? Was that part of like starting the own business so you're not just in kind of one organization silo, or is that just something that came along just from a more naturally later as you guys are working with so many organizations too?
Yeah, the foolish vision was to work with everybody, and it worked. So that's awesome. 22 years later, right? It took a while. Sharing best practices amongst the executives and the emerging leaders is something that we're actually very intentional about. We actually have a group of us that get together every other month virtually and get together once a year in person. We've been doing that probably 6 years now. It's been, I would say, if you talk to, Jamie over at the NHL, who, we work with them, uh, you and I collaboratively work with them. They're not where they're at now with their player development without the learnings from the other leagues and unions. And what's interesting is like even this app that they've launched that you guys were behind, like other leagues are like, whoa, we got to do that. So now the NHL learned from them, and now they're able to share back with that group, and there is this really it's a unique ecosystem. I can't imagine the salesperson at one NFL team and an NFL team or a baseball team and an NBA team are sharing best practices because they're trying to win all with the same business. We're all in the same business of trying to help, the athletes, and it's really refreshing to see the collaborative nature and the game theory play out with that.
I was going to ask about that meeting, but then you were bringing it up. I think that's a cool, I think something most people are not aware of, like how much actually sharing goes on in this space, which to your point, I think is pretty cool to see, and just how mission oriented most of the people, if not all of the people that are working in that space, really are, and how much they actually want current and former players to succeed is a pretty. I always walk away from different engagements there pretty positive on sports, which is not always, I feel like, how I feel in other in other settings too,
Yeah,
even looking at
yeah.
the
Well,
landscape.
it is. It's good to see, and I think all the leagues and unions unanimously understand that this is important. This is their talent, right? And they're going to be connected to that sport forever.
Yeah.
So even if you don't care about people, it's a PR thing for the folks that they've got to make sure that this talent is being taken care of, and doing good things out in the world. And guys are doing so many great things, and that's where I get frustrated is the clickbait and the stories. And sure, there's guys doing bad things. There's so many guys doing so many great things. There's a stat I love to share right now. We have 47 former NFL players getting their doctoral degrees, right? Like people are like, oh my God, that's
Wow.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
And some people literally we just had a guy, get his MD, one guy get his JD, the other guy got his doctoral degree and is now teaching. It's just wonderful to see the things that the guys are doing. Like there's mushroom farmers, there's guys who are driving truck for a living. That's great. The guys are doing everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to your point, the those are not the stories you're going to hear or see or be published, but yeah, obviously a great testament to the work of the leagues, but then obviously you all too of helping, these athletes find those paths, because I know a lot of times players might not know what they want to do, or they don't know that there are resources available to actually, take advantage of and start on these paths too.
Yeah, and that's what's wild to me is when and part of it is they just get hit with so much, and it
Yeah.
all goes so fast. I mean, to, there if the average career is 3 years, it's gone in a blink, right? And a lot of guys are just focused on hanging on and making sure they keep their roster spot, and even if somebody does like 10 years, it still goes fast for them, and they got the rest of their life. And they got to give themselves some grace. Like, yeah, you want them to do things while they're playing, and that's really important to us that we try to get them to at least have a plan. Or, I have a guy who the NFLPA just connected me to. They saw his LinkedIn connected to someone at PGA, and we're getting him a conversation because he's on IR and he is in year 5 and he's interested in learning more about the business of golf. And I think it's wonderful to see that, right? And then there's some guys that are like, I'm not paying attention to this till I'm a former player. And usually the player is the last person to know that their career is over, and they might go a year or two longer, trying to get on a roster, and that costs them money, and then they're not making money. And maybe, some of them, in particular in the sports where you're not getting as much money like MLS or NWSL, so you got to get a job a little bit quicker. And so those are the ones that are so hungry, and they bust their butt and they do everything that our advisors are advising them to do, and then they have some really rapid transitions, which they're all very capable of.
Yeah. No, for sure. You mentioned kind of the stories you don't always hear. I think one of the stories you do hear a lot is like NIL, and you have like the first waves now of athletes that were in college during the NIL era, sorry, and they're coming in and they're now in your professional leagues, and they're now working with some of your staff if they're already kind of in that space. Have you seen any of the impacts of that coming into the pro leagues and how athletes are maybe more, less, more prepared, less prepared, differently prepared, or just kind of those changes that can then kind of trickle into the professional leagues too?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I think because the NIL coupled with the increase in money going into players' pockets, right? I mean, the bigger the TV deals get, the more money the athletes make. Now, that doesn't mean you can't blow through, 20 million as fast as you can blow through three, right? And again, not saying that there are players that do that, but it's really more about they might what we're starting to see is maybe, hey, I do have a little bit more money in the bank than had I just gone to college and not had NIL and played 3 years in the NFL. Because when I was at Oklahoma, I made $1 million and put it in the bank, and that actually gives you more time to like figure out what you want to do and chase purpose instead of I got to get a job because I need a job to pay my bills. So the optimist in me is hopeful that more of the guys and the women are going to take advantage of putting some of that money in the bank, and then we're trying to stand up some additional types of programming and experiences that maybe it's a little bit less about going back to school to get a degree, and it's more about going and getting a vocational certification, or hey, I really want to get a real estate cert, or I want to get something that is going to help me in the business world. The Kelly School of Business out of Indiana, they have partnerships with a number of our different or our different partners, and you can get like a 4 credit certification, and then if you really like it, you can fully matriculate into the full MBA program, and that's a phenomenal educational experience. We've got a lot of guys doing that, which has been great because I think it helps them as they're entering into the business world. I think a challenge that we're seeing that's an emerging is the transfer portal. And guys jumping from school to school, maybe graduation rates dipping a bit. We're doing a little bit more research on that because right now it's more anecdotal, but the sense is the more guys jump from school to school, the graduation rates dip. So that's just going to create other challenges. So it's a little complicated. It's a little messy, and we still got some things to learn.
With the portal, is it graduation rates dipping, but then also maybe the athlete not feeling like there's that one school he or she can just like go back and finish their degree because they may not have, I played here for 3 years, I can just go back and kind of finish it there since they have a couple different ones as well.
Yeah, I give you like, let's say you got somebody who's at a mid-major and they transfer to like, they're there 2, 3 years, and then, maybe they go to Miami or they go to Oklahoma. Well, Miami or Oklahoma is on the hook for them, like paying for them to finish school per the NCAA rules. But the best place for them to finish might be the institution they were at prior to
Yeah.
that, right?
Hmm.
So transferring those credits back and articulation agreements, or going just to a completely different institution because maybe I went to this school in middle of the country, and I'm originally from the South, and I'm not going back there, and
Yeah.
maybe all my options aren't there, so maybe I have to go to even a different school from that. So that's the puzzle that our advisors work on and kind of put together every day. Every one of those is super unique. I know we just had a hockey player who, played in an Ivy, and they wanted him to come back on campus, and he was like, I can't.
Yeah.
Well, Maria from our team figured out a way to get it done, right? And combination of, online and taking classes somewhere else. So there's paths there, but the people that are at the college, their job, I got new people coming in.
Yeah,
I got
for
to
sure.
get them into programs. Like they got to worry about who's in front of them. And right now, those people are super stressed because all of a sudden on January 5th, you got 28 people coming in from the
Yeah.
portal, and you got to get them you got to get them enrolled. You got to get them in classes. You can't think about the former player, even though it's kind of their responsibility per the NCAA guidelines.
That makes not sense. I think the portal and all of those different things would probably fill up a whole new podcast. You mentioned some of these already, but when you're looking at working with these athletes, what's the biggest challenge you all see when working with these athletes? Is it, I'll actually just let you answer, but like, what are the challenges that they face in terms of clicking with your team and getting everything done?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the sport. Definitely different sports. Like the more money you make, if you played in the NBA, you're you probably made a lot more money than most other, even if you only had a few years. And then maybe you went overseas and you maybe you're 30, 35 years old coming back and may or may not have a degree. I'm hopeful the NBA guys will because the longer you stay in school, the more money you can make because NIL, I think that could be a good thing for basketball. I think it's actually helping college basketball. Um, but now all of a sudden you're like, hey, I want to walk into like $100,000 job, and you don't have that credential necessarily, unless you're going to coach at the collegiate level or coach at the pro level, like walking into an entry level job, if you will. So we got to think a little bit differently about, some of the things that they might want to do. So yeah, so I think the more money people make, there's an assumption that they're okay just because they have money. That's not necessarily true. Like you still have to have some sort of purpose.
Yeah.
And if you're a little rudderless, sometimes that can be challenging. So sitting down and doing a career assessment, helping them figure out what they like and don't like, getting them to understand that just if you do something now, that doesn't have to be forever, right? That can just be something to get you going and help you figure out, I really thought I liked this. And then after I got into it, I realized that's not necessarily what I want to do. I want to do another career pivot. So I think a challenge is just usually when they're referred to us and then they go and they set up a call with us, they're a lot of the time pretty engaged. We have a pretty low rate of non-contact, right?
Yeah.
We track all of this. Very little non-contact. Maybe somebody comes in and they think we get them to hook up with a job. We don't do that. Like there's no hookups. Um, we help them sort through and navigate that process and I think maybe to your question, as I kind of talked to think a little bit, a big challenge really is it doesn't happen overnight, right? And someone might get frustrated that they can't just walk into something. You got to do the work, you got to do the introspection. You still are going to need a resume, right?
Yeah.
You're still going to have to network. You're still going to have to interview, and you got to practice that. And you've never practiced that, or maybe you have when you went to the draft combine and you weren't talking about the things you need to talk about now. So there still are things you have to do in order to secure that opportunity, and that's the fundamental stuff that our advisors are really really good at. And I would say a lot of the guys that do come and women who come into our care they eventually do understand that. And if they don't, then they try to go do it on their own. Either they win or they lose. And if they lose, they're back with us anyway, right?
And is that kind of a bit of the special, I would say, special sauce that you all bring in terms of just having the time and the care to really understand each individual situation that maybe someone at a team or at a league or at an association doesn't have, and then also obviously having a lot of examples now, like different things to point at of things that other players maybe in similar situations have done. Is that kind of the where most of the leagues really see the benefit of working with you all is kind of that one-on-one care, would you say?
Yeah, like if you're working at the league or the union, your role is more administrative in nature,
Yeah.
right? You if there's 2,000 NFL players that come in and out of the league, and are in the league, and then three or 400 come in and out of the league every year. They're not they're not staffed or equipped or trained, quite frankly, to do this work, right? Our people, this is what they do all day, every day. All of our advisors are master certified career development specialists by the National Career Development Association. Almost all of them worked on a college campus with student athletes, so they have that muscle. They've worked in academic advising, so they understand the academic advising component. They're able to carry large caseloads and move people through. A lot of we have one person who's been with us less than 5 years. Everyone else has been with us, on the advising staff for over 10. And I have one who's been with me more than 15. They just have, they're just super, super skilled, and our partners can trust that they'll send them to us and we'll work them through that process. There's like no thought by our partners that they got no problem sending people to us because they know that we're going to work through. And even if it doesn't always work, they at least trust that our process and our systems are sound.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How many athletes would you say roughly since you started this you all have worked with?
The database that we have now, the current database has probably about 5,000 players in it.
Yeah,
Um, there's probably, if you go back to when I first started, maybe double that.
yeah,
So but it's safe to say that at least 5,000 have come in to our care. We've had over 1,000 program completions with the trust alone on the scholarship. So that's real tangible
yeah.
economic impact. So if you think about someone who earns a degree is going to earn $1.1 million more in their life, 1.4 if they're a black man. If you get a master's, it's even more. I'd argue that sometimes education is going to unlock like an opportunity in coaching that they wouldn't
Yeah.
otherwise get. So I've got examples of players who got that degree and then went on to coach in college and are making a lot more money than they would make if they were doing my job, right? So the economic impact of education and what it unlocks, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And that's why this is so important, right? I go back to where we started. The education piece is so critical. Getting credentialed so you can go and do a work function that's going to allow you, degree or no degree, degree or masters or certification. Those things are just going to they're transformational in people's lives.
For sure. Yeah. And I think you mentioned this earlier in one of the answers of a player that's whatever their sport they're at a certain level also expects to then walk into a job, right, at a certain income level that most of the time requires, a college degree, at least like a 4-year college degree. So I think the economic makes a lot of sense. With all those people, what are the key lessons you've learned if a new athlete comes to you that you would want to give to them? If you can still, I know there's probably way more than this, but if you can distill it into two, three, four kind of like key lessons you and the team have seen through all
Yeah,
those phases.
and not to be, I mean, not to be like hard ass or tough or anything, but like I'm not gonna work harder than you're gonna work, right? So we got a referral again. I don't do much of the advising anymore. I mean, I'll more like connect people and that. But like I had said, hey, have the guy send me a forward ready email. I'll set a call, right? And my email, hey, suggest a few times. If he does, I delete the email. If he doesn't respond to me, I'm not chasing him. It's not my
Yeah,
responsibility. It's it's going to be on them to own the process, to own the result, and I think that's important. That of course, there'll be our team will, when they're handling their caseload, say, hey, maybe you missed this email, things like that. But like, there's a next step that hey, we did this. Now your next step is this. If they don't do that next step, it could be a couple weeks. Hey, what happened to this? Oh, I got busy, whatever. That's
yeah,
fine. If it's like they disappear, our people are super, super busy. They've got big caseloads. So I think the most important thing is the athlete has to own the process. The equivalent we use is like a strength coach, right? We're not going to lift the weights for you. We're going to help you, show you how to do it. We're going to be there to spot you. We're going to connect you. We're going to be a good partner in this, but you're going to be driving the car here. So I think that's probably, you know, a really, really important one. I'll go back on education. You might see somebody and you say, they're like, man, I just can't get a job. Okay. When they first come in. Okay. Well, send me your resume in the last three jobs you applied for. Well, you look at the jobs, you look at the resume, they ain't lining up. Right. So it's managing expectations about uh, what you're credentialed to do. And if you look at this job and that's really what you want, well, let's work to get you there, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you need a little bit more work experience in this space. Maybe you got to step back, but you'll be great once you get in there. But you got to get in, and you're not going to get in at this level. You get Maria had a great story actually. She just told on the player development call with the NHL about a woman soccer player who had applied for a job that was above what she was qualified for. They loved her LinkedIn profile and they said, hey, not this, but that. And then she got in the building with that. And then hopefully we'll get to the other one, right? I think those are great stories. And I think it's really important that that the athlete owns that. They have to own everything and they have to own that, like, hey, maybe I'm not there yet. But they also, the athletes have these great skills that you cannot teach, right? They were the best in the world at what they did, and now they're how do you apply those in other ways? And when they
Yeah.
get once they get in those buildings, woof, man, they've done some amazing things. We got some amazing stories about that.
I think that's one of the things when I listen to just the work you all do. I think sometimes athletes are told about these transferable skills,
Yeah.
but sometimes it makes it seem like that just having those skills is everyone will open every door for you based on the
Right.
fact that you have those skills. And it's almost, in my opinion, sometimes being looked at too simple to transition out of sports that every company out there will just be like, oh, you're so and so, like here's a senior level job. And I think one of the ways you were just describing it, and the example of the soccer one is sometimes, yes, you have those skills, but there's also kind of the resume you got to build with that
Yeah.
to get to where you want to be. Just like you were a really good high school athlete, and then you were a college athlete, and then you go into the pros. That's the one thing I see sometimes, the frustration with athletes of almost being told that the transferable skills alone will open all the doors, right? Which I think, like you were saying, is once you get in the door, those will really propel you, and people
That's right.
value that. But it's not the only thing that will initially get you in there too.
Yeah, it's a great asset
Yeah,
that there are a lot of people on earth that don't have. So that's something you have that they don't have, and they might have some things that you don't have, right? So
yeah,
uh, go get those other things that they have, and that thing they can't put pro athlete on their resume. They can't
for sure.
put like it, so that is helpful. And then, another great asset, athletes get their ass kicked every day. They're being judged every day, every minute, every play. They're wearing biosensors, they're on film. Like when we hang up this call, I could go take a nap, right? Like nobody's like they're looking at what we deliver, right? So the
Yeah,
athlete having gone through and done all those things, and they're not taking a play off because they can't. And so that
yeah,
does transfer. If anything, when athletes do get in buildings, that's one of the challenges that they face is they will get frustrated with the pace of corporate America
yeah,
and how slow things move and how unresponsive some people can be,
yeah.
right?
And that effort alone is not always the will lead to a different outcome right away. I think when
Right.
talking to some athletes too, it's like, you know, I play tennis. If my serve is bad, I kind of know what to do to improve it. And a lot of it is just repetition, repetition, repetition. But that often, like once you get in a work setting, you don't hit your sales target. It might not just be making more calls, right? Or making more connections. It might be three, four other things too, where like
Yeah.
that the interplay between doing something new and seeing the result might take much longer than in a sport, especially at a professional level where you're so in tuned with every little thing about your sport too.
Yeah, well, you're again. This goes back to you're the best in the world, right?
Yeah,
And then when you're coming in, you might not understand. And this is something I know I experienced. I would beat my head against the wall when I was younger, right? Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we doing that? And then you get older and you're like, oh, because you realize that the people on the executive level who are in like, you know, who are good, they have a lot more information, right? There's
Yeah.
decisions I have to make for our company where I just have more information. I'm not going to be able to explain everything that's in my head, right?
Hmm.
Like it, you have to trust to some degree that like, hey, especially at a really big company, they got like, I can't explain why we just can't do that right now. And that
Yeah.
gets frustrating. But as you start climbing the ladder, you start learning things and you realize, maybe things go slow, especially at big companies for a reason.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. Like Marvel is really, really good at making comic books. They make 80 a month. They're really good at making movies and they have a system. And when you come in with something new, they're like, no, we're good. You know,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
business we built with them, it took a while
Yeah.
because people are like, wait a minute, we got to do that. What about this? But we do it this way.
Yeah. For sure. Um, I know we talked a lot about the professional sport. You mentioned earlier in the intro kind of the foundational work and all the work you've done there. Can you share a little bit more just about the work? Because I know it's a really cool mission you all are supporting and the impact you're creating in that. So can you share a little bit more just on the Afterlife Foundation and the work that entails?
Yeah, so that came online officially 2010, I think was when we had our charter. I think it was a couple years earlier that we were concepting it. And guy Jeff McCann, he was the director of training curriculum for the National Football Foundation. They had a great program called Play It Smart. 2008 financial crisis hit, kind of fell apart. I had been doing some consulting work with them. I was really loved the idea. If you think about it, 50 years ago, John Thompson, the first person he hired was not a basketball coach, but an academic coach. He said, if I'm going to bring these kids into Georgetown, I need to make sure they've got support to navigate this place. That has turned into a whole industry that you're very aware of, right? They
Yeah.
have whole buildings and they have staffs of people who work with the athletes now. So that doesn't exist on the high school level until, especially at scale, maybe here and there. But so we said we were going to take that on and we have different partnerships with be it the Heisman Trust or Under Armour where they help fund. So Baltimore is a great example. Under Armour gave us an audacious goal, or we kind of talked about it with them about having an academic coach in every Baltimore City school. There's 23 of them. We're in 17 right now. And it started with, just one school that was doing it. They were kind of a holdover from the Play It Smart days. And it turned into, hopefully all of them will have this eventually, but it is driven the grade point average up. Just having that person there, right?
Yeah.
They're there all day, every day. They're helping them navigate life leadership skills, making sure you see big spikes in or big decreases in ineligibility, right? More students become eligible. Now they got a study hall and now they're going to do a service learning. We do a lot of events. We just did one and I can drop the link. There was a nice 4 or 5 minute piece on the one we just did in Eastern PA. We've got I think about 30 to 40 schools out there, and it was student athlete led. So the
Nice.
student athletes, they put together the whole thing. About 250 student athletes came, and it's just wonderful to see them take ownership of their own futures, right? Because most of them won't go to college. I can probably name on my hand the number of ones that actually played professionally that
That's
had,
awesome.
were in the high school because it's so hard to make it to the pro level.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful that these current former professional athletes have Val and Maria and Tracy and Connor and Beth to help guide them. But the high school kids, there's no collective bargaining agreement. So for us, it was really important to do that. And, we've got some really big announcements soon about, expanding and some of the things that we're doing to, hopefully by the time I'm talking to you next year, we'll be in 200 schools and that's, 20,000 kids. So that's a little bit about the work.
Yeah. So you all raise the money, the school then the high school will put in the academic person, and then the foundation pays for the salary. Is that kind of the version, or how does it work on a?
Yeah,
Is that
kind
I
of.
know I'm probably simplifying it too much, but
Yeah,
is that kind of the
it's
process?
almost there. I mean, we have the school self-invest and we will match up to a certain amount. And then
Got it.
in
Yeah.
time we step down our funding and they step it up. Like there's a school, one of our New York schools, we just, it started with an idea and it turned into, oh, we got a little bit of money and now they have over $100,000 budget where they have a person and they have success
Yeah.
tutors and they have a whole thing for the student athletes and we don't fund that anymore. They come to our national training.
Yeah.
They get to participate in some cool things that we do, but that's the goal. The goal is like we get these different partners of ours, and we say, "Hey, we're gonna have this money. We do a call for applications, and then we'll see who really wants this, right?"
Yeah.
And then we help them stand up the program in their school, but the school hires them and then we'll train and support them.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think obviously amazing then if it turns into like an actual budgeted thing within the school. Amazing.
Yeah, that's the goal. If it was
Yeah.
perpetual funding, that's tough, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Ultimately, I would like for us to be primarily a training
Training engine.
and yeah, just a
Yeah.
training and development. Every year I think we're our national conference. It'll be our fifth, maybe sixth year. University of Maryland hosts us every summer. It's Brady Work down there is and his team have been wonderful. And it's first class. It's
Yeah.
really turned into something that we're really proud of. I think we're onboarding three new board members next week. So it's really one of them actually was an academic counselor at Syracuse. So
Oh,
it's pretty.
nice, 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 nice. Well, we'll definitely put the info on that in the kind of show notes too. I know we're coming up on time here. My last question is just as you're looking at 2, 3, 5 years, into the future, where would you want the Aflife journey to go? Obviously, you all have a really great legacy of helping athletes, helping people kind of across the country. But what's kind of the core focus for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, it's kind of like art or fashion. It's never finished, right? It's
Yeah.
our total addressable market right now of people who qualify is about 48,000. So we've scratched the surface. Getting more people to utilize the service, and that's ongoing. There's three or 400 NFL players that come in and out every year, right? So if we're going to constantly have 400 new people entering into former player and then new people coming in, that's just a constant education. So, but you do that across all the sports. And then you want to go deeper with each of them. We have tremendous opportunity, in particular with baseball and hockey, because they're new in terms of standing up player development in the last, 3 to 5 years. So I think we have great opportunity there. We're starting to do some stuff internationally. We've done some trainings. We're in the middle of a couple different potential partnerships, which is exciting to us. That's something I've wanted to do more of, and I think maybe we won't do what how we're doing it. We're going to have to do it a little bit differently. But I know Tracy, especially our work with ATP, that certainly is, she's on calls sometimes with someone who's in Australia or someone who's in
Yeah.
Czechoslovakia or wherever it is. And so, we're starting to do, I think on the athlete services side, it's deeper and it's more global. And so that's exciting. And then, on the foundation side, there's, there's we'll never get to every high school, but
Yeah.
that's why they call it a mission, right? But we can certainly grow. We're doing a lot better job of getting state funding. So we have that in Pennsylvania, Connecticut. We got a couple other states right now that are in play, and we've really figured that model out. So that's going to help us scale. And then on the entertainment side, we're adding more partners. I know 2 years ago added Mattel and that's Barbie and Hot Wheels, and we've since then we've added ABG, so we've got like Muhammad Ali and Marilyn Monroe and Elvis, and then we've got another really, really big monster that we'll hopefully announce here in the next week or so. So just exciting stuff on that side because there's the entertainment stuff is constantly you have to keep that fresh for the teams and
For sure.
really seeing that business really grow and it's just more normalized now. It was an idea and now we're a little bit of the victim of our own success because there's a lot more entertainment properties entering into the space. So
Yeah,
now we've got to get them to choose, Coke over Pepsi or Pepsi over Coke, right? Which is it's a different muscle we have to build, right?
for sure. Yeah. Where do people go find out more about all of the work you all do? If someone is interested, hadn't heard about Aflife or didn't have all the deep dive, where do they go?
Yeah, we have athlife.com, which we're actually, we got a new website coming out last week. So hopefully tomorrow, by the time this is up. On social, I'd say we're pretty light. LinkedIn is really the best place to go. That's where, I know I personally spend the most time. And yeah, I think that you can learn enough through that. And I would say podcasts like this, I've been on a few. We're pretty selective with where we show up, but I think you can learn more just by digging into some of the archives of the few that I know I've
Yeah.
got a few posted on my social, like pinned in my profile that you might there's a deeper dive on the entertainment stuff. There's a deeper dive on the foundation stuff. So and and a lot of it is like I've told a lot of these stories before, but things have evolved. They really have, and it's in it. It's the AI stuff is having stuff move pretty fast, particular on the athlete services side. That's just been that's something we're wrapping our arms around and has been really helpful and also super scary. So
Yeah. Yeah, I would say maybe next in 5 years there's the AI John and AI Christian doing the podcast together, you
they
know?
might need it. Hopefully, I'll be on a beach now. I love the work. I can't imagine not doing it, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate getting time to talk to you about all this. I know you and I, when we're on the road in particular, we get to chat about this, so it's nice to be able to get it on recording.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, thanks so much for the time. I know there's a lot going on, as people probably noticed from all the different things you're involved in, plus kids and their sports and their lives and their things. So definitely appreciate the hour here. That wraps up our episode. If you like Bridging the Gap, subscribe. We have it on LinkedIn, and if you're listening to this in the podcast version, you're obviously already on the right format to listen. So just follow and subscribe there. John, thanks again for joining us, and have a great week, everyone.